total transparency and trusting that if they feel your mental health struggles are an impediment to discerning with their particular community, then maybe other communities, or maybe the Lord is calling you to some other vocation. Mother Natalia, do you have any advice for those discerning religious life with a past of mental health issues and considering a healing journey for them in this? And if there's any hope for religious life vocation in the future. So also this person is wearing the same shirt she wore yesterday.
Good job. You're in good company.
Different person who asked the question. But so mental health is, it's a really complex thing today because so many of us struggle with like various, whether it be anxiety or depression or lots of things. Like it's just so common today. And I think that actually it's not probably more common today than it was like 50 years ago. It's maybe just like more diagnosed and more talked about and more aware. There's a greater awareness for it. So I would say my first piece of advice is transparency. Like you need to be totally transparent with the community that you're discerning with, particularly, not necessarily with the whole community, but particularly with the superior and with the formation directress, if they have a formation directress or whatever that is. Transparency with them and with your spiritual director is the most important thing, because it's hard to speak to like individual cases if I don't know like what kind of mental health, if I don't know the history, if I don't know all of that. But to keep in mind that like the point of any vocation is to love the Lord in the way that he's asking you to love him. And so if he wants that to be through a community, through a religious life vocation, then he can make that happen, and he can work through the superiors and such. But if they don't feel like that's your calling, like it's a mutual discernment, right? Like when you're discerning with a community, it's not just your discernment, it's theirs as well. So total transparency and trusting that if they feel your mental health struggles are an impediment to discerning with their particular community, then maybe other communities, or maybe the Lord is calling you to some other vocation, be it married life or single life or whatever that is. And just trusting that like if the end goal is to love him, then he can help you do that in any vocation that you're able to enter into.
Yeah. And I also think I think it is more common now, and I don't think it's just because it's diagnosed. I think it's also like we all just went through a massive trauma over the last 2 years, maybe 3 years. Like not everyone's gone through, I think everyone's gone through some trauma in your life, but COVID was a massive trauma to all of us. And there are effects from that trauma, let alone other things. And yes, I think you're right. Like the fact that we talk more about mental, we're more aware of anxiety and other mental crosses, and it's just more open to talk about. Because I know someone who's at a Catholic university and just kind of had an episode where they ended up having to go to leave their dorm room in an ambulance. And I remember I was talking to my friend about it. I'm like, oh my goodness, are you like, that's so traumatic. And like this girl, do you think there's or guy, it could be either boy or girl. I'm like, is that not something? And they're like no, like 90% of her or his dorm mates suffer from some form of mental trauma. There's no stigma. I was like, oh, right. That's so different than when I was in college, So I think it is so much more prevalent, and learning how to work with that.